As Spurs make the biggest signing of the transfer window so far, Big Ange announces that the spending isn't over as Tottenham bid for a young Brazilian starlet. Meanwhile, injury-prone Pedro Neto doesn't worry Todd Bowley over at Chelsea. Man United get their star men. And could Newcastle's best young player be heading to Anfield? All this and more on today's Daily Premier League transfer news with me, Barnaby Slater. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Once again, please do press that like button. Also, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already and you want daily content about all things Tottenham and Premier League transfer news. Make sure you press that subscribe button. Heading for 20,000 subscribers. Want to get there. And also, guys, you can become a member. Really helps me to make this daily content for you. Only £1 a month. All the details in the description box below. But let's get started with that Brazilian wonderkid fullback that Tottenham are being linked with. He's Flamengo's player and his name is Wesley. 20 years old. Very exciting young player. He's quick. He's aggressive on the ball, loves to beat his man, which is so in keeping with what Ange Postecoglou wants from his inverted fullbacks. Very comfortable infield, which suits as well. And I think this is key, especially now that Emerson Royal has left the club to go to AC Milan. If you haven't seen it on social media, he was seen arriving in Milan last night. There were loads of press, loads of photographers. I don't know if the AC Milan fans really know what they're getting their hands on there with Emerson Royal, but fair play to him. Cult figure at Spurs, and we got 15 million euros for him, so well done. But meanwhile, back to Wesley. He reads the game really well, loves an interception. I've seen lots of clips of him intercepting, reading the game beautifully, and then driving forward with the ball when he's nicked it ahead of an opposition striker. He is kind of like the antithesis of Emerson Royal, if you like. Emerson Royal, a good defender, but not very good going forward, whereas Wesley just loves to get on the ball and drive forward when he can. He's incredibly exciting to watch. Also, as well as being good driving with the ball and quick on the ball, dribbling and stuff, he also has excellent vision for passes, mid-range and long-range. And as I think I've mentioned, just incredibly brave. So kind of like the archetypal Ange Postecoglou inverted fullback. He's only 20 years old, like I said, at Flamengo in Brazil, so I do wonder whether work permit could be an issue. Is it one of these deals where we'll try and buy him and potentially loan him back until he gets the required points to be able to come to Spurs? But an exciting link, and it's been a very good few days in the transfer market for Spurs, as I mentioned, with Emerson Royal obviously going out, but also, as I'm sure you all know from Friday and Saturday, Spurs have bought Dominic Solanke from Bournemouth for a club record fee. I think this is a very exciting signing, and one thing that's not being talked about much, and I'll give some quotes from Ange Postecoglou on Solanke, and of course I'll talk more about my thoughts on him in an attacking sense, but as we all know, and we saw again in the Bayern Munich game at the weekend, Spurs struggle to defend set pieces. And Solanke is great in the air and a big old boy. And what we've really suffered from since Harry Kane left is that player who sits on the corner of the 6-yard box from corners and just heads out that ball where the opposition are trying to get it just over that first man and miss it. And I think Solanke could be good for that position, or maybe even as a marker in the centre when we're defending set pieces. I know it might be deemed to be a little boring to go into defensive stuff first with a striker, but I do think it's underrated how poor we've become, or untalked about almost, how poor we've become at defending set pieces and how we've needed players who will attack the ball aerially, and I think that's good for Solanke. Anyway, as I mentioned, Ange Postecoglou has given some quotes on this signing. He says, "Since I spoke to Dominic, I got a real sense that he had a really burning desire to take his football to another level and really challenge himself at a big club. Like I said, he's keen to make an impact, and our job is to make sure we provide that platform for him. He was one I was very keen to get in. It took a while to get over the line. I think he'll be a great fit for us where he's at in his career. We identified him because he's got the attributes that we're looking for." He also said, when asked, that he doesn't see any reason why Dominic Solanke couldn't start at the King Power Stadium a week today in Tottenham's first Premier League game of the season. He'll have a good week of training this week. He's done most of the preseason. I think he maybe had a little bit of a knock before the last game, although, of course, that could well have been him not wanting to play because he knew there was a transfer to Spurs imminent. Now, what do I think Dominic Solanke offers Spurs going forward? Well, one thing that I don't think we've been great at, despite loving Ange's system, loving the way we've been playing, we've really struggled to keep the ball in that final third, by which I mean we get it to the final third very easily. We play beautiful football between the lines, into the half spaces, in the pockets. But what's been happening quite a lot with Richarlison when he's played, with Sonny when he's played in the 9, and with Brennan Johnson, is that they do not hold the ball up well enough to bring other players into play. And also what happens quite a lot is we'll make a chance, get a cross in, it'll be cleared, and then we'll win the first ball in midfield. But once again, we will then play it into the final third and it won't stick. And this is something that Solanke will be great at. But don't just think he's an old-fashioned target man number 9. He's not a Fernando Llorente where holding the ball up and winning the balls in the air is pretty much his only attribute. Solanke is deceptively quick as well. He can run with the ball. Check out last season's clips from Bournemouth. Lots of occasions where he wins the ball in midfield and beats a man and runs with it and then lays it off. He's also an underrated passer. We were incredibly lucky for over a decade to have Harry Kane, who was basically a number 9 and a number 10, where he could drop deep and then play these lovely diags across the pitch, short to mid-range passes as well as long balls over the top. And Solanke can do that as well. He's pretty much got everything in his locker. And one of the things that Ange Postecoglou talked about since we've signed him, and I love this about Ange, is he's talked about how Solanke has had to make his way back up from a few career knocks. Obviously, he was at Chelsea, he was at Liverpool, and he never really got full chances there. So he's had to make his way back up from Bournemouth, from going to Bournemouth in the Championship, scoring a lot of goals in the Championship, coming up to the Premier League when Bournemouth were kind of struggling, and then once he got to start in a team where they were had a forward-thinking manager who wanted to play progressive football and play everything through him, he scored 19 league goals last season, 4th highest league scorer in the Premier League, and that is not to be sniffed at. And I think we have to support this player. Let's face it, Tottenham have not had success, really, when signing a striker for a long time, I have to say. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who was the last striker that Spurs signed? Obviously, we had Harry Kane, who came up through the ranks. Llorente, I could say, did what was expected of him, but he wasn't a breakout. But we've struggled, haven't we? Vincent Janssen, all the way back to Roberto Soldado, all the way back to Helder Postiga years ago. Obviously, in between those times, we had Robbie Keane, we had Jermaine Defoe, and they did really, really well. But in terms of the latter day, the modern day, in terms of spending a lot of money on a striker, it's not really worked out. So we need to support Solanke, and let's hope he can get a goal early, get his scoring career for Spurs going as soon as possible, and then the team can get behind him, the fans can get behind him, and maybe we can get him up towards that 20 league goals position again, like he was last season. The other thing that I think is really important about this signing is we have Richarlison and Solanke now. 2 number 9 options, 3 number 9 options if you include Sonny. So we're covered for all bases. We're covered for the Europa League. We're covered for the cup games. And I think the pressure of having Solanke there will push Richarlison on. I'll talk a little bit more about Richarlison later in this episode and about how he has turned down a lucrative move to Saudi Arabia because he wants to fight for his place. And let's not forget, he scored, I think, 11 in 12 when he was on a streak last season. So can he prove himself to Big Ange and show him, actually, I can be the number 9. And now that I have this pressure from this big money signing, I'm going to prove to you that I can start. One of the problems for Richarlison, though, and I think this is one of the reasons why potentially Spurs were willing to let him go to Saudi Arabia, is that he doesn't get on the pitch enough, and he's not been on the pitch at all this pre-season. So I think Solanke is ahead of him already. And I don't think Richarlison will like that, but he needs to get fit, and he needs to stay fit. Anyway, Ange Postecoglou has also been asked whether Dejan Kulusevski, who's done brilliantly, I think, in the false 9 position during pre-season, will continue to play in that role following Dominic Solanke's arrival. He said, he was pretty honest, he said, no, I don't think so. I think the reason for us, why we signed Dom, and hopefully Rishi should be ready as well, is that we want to have a player through that area who is a bit more accustomed to that role. Decky has done a great job for us, but I think his strengths and attributes are more in that attacking midfield or wide role. I think he is really developing, and he has had a really good pre-season for us, and hopefully it gives us some more flexibility and potency through the middle when he is playing, because he can get into those scoring areas. Well, I think Decky Kulusevski has done brilliantly in the false 9. I think he can play there, gives us another option, a 4th option in that centre-forward role. But one thing I'm intrigued by, and I'd like to hear what you think in the comments as well, big Dominic Solanke playing down the middle in the number 9. Is it now time for Kulusevski to go back out to that right wing role, and he can whip back in, come back in on his left foot and whip those brilliant crosses in. Do you remember those crosses he put in for Richarlison last season? I think there was one at Bournemouth that maybe Richarlison missed a chance from, but a fair few where Richarlison scored. That's right, Nottingham Forest away, whipped in a brilliant cross, and Richarlison with a great header. And Solanke's going to be right there, big old unit in the middle to win headers and win chances, score goals. And I wonder whether, because Brennan Johnson, I don't think has had the best pre-season. You know what you're going to get from Brennan Johnson. Where he's elite, I think, Brennan Johnson. And I know some of you don't really rate him yet, and he's very young, and it was a big transfer fee. But where he's elite is when he runs onto the ball, he gets his head up, and first time he whips it across the box. That's where he's brilliant. But I wonder whether Leicester away on the first day next season, where we want to keep hold of the ball, control the game early on, I wonder whether Kulusevski will start on the right, Solanke down the middle, and we'll get it out to Kulusevski, and he will whip in some balls to try and get Solanke some goals in the air. The other option for Kulusevski, which I think is going to be great for us this season, is as the kind of spare creator to challenge James Maddison in that 8-10 role. Maddison, I think, improved in the game against Bayern Munich. He's not had a great pre-season. I'm not sure he's still up to the form he was at the first 10 games of last season, but I'd love for Maddison to hit the ground running at the King Power against his former team. What we need from him, I think, to get his confidence up, to score one of those free kicks we know he's brilliant at, and he hasn't scored one for Spurs yet. So can we get a free kick out the box and Maddison get one, hit it in the top corner, and get his season up and running? Because if not, I think Kulusevski really is pushing him for that 8-10 role. And I love how Kulusevski uses space, how he takes it on the half turn. He's got a great low sense of gravity. It's very hard for opposition players to take the ball off him. So suddenly, that signing of Solanke, I think, has really brought us more options in that forward third. And that's something that Ange has been saying we need for a number of months now. So well done to Spurs, well done to the board. They got the deal done. I don't know exactly why the deal took so long, as Ange said, because I know a lot of fans have been saying this, and I kind of agree. Solanke didn't go off to the Euros, so that is a deal that could have been done all window. But maybe it's been about, and I say it again, and I know it frustrates people, Bournemouth having to get their ducks in a row to make sure that they get a replacement. And also maybe Bournemouth saying to Solanke, we don't want you to go, and him having to maybe push a little bit harder over this summer. As I mentioned earlier, Richarlison, he is not going to Saudi Arabia despite having a very lucrative offer. And here is what he said, and I have to say it's very impressive because, let's face it, money talks, but Richarlison said this: the money is big, but my dreams are bigger. He wants to stay at Spurs, he wants to fight for his place, and he is desperate to play as the number 9 in the World Cup next time for Brazil. And I think I'm impressed with Richarlison for that. And like I said, he just needs to get fit, get on the pitch, because there will be chances, there will be games, even if he doesn't start, where Spurs need to chase the game, and he could work as a 2 up front with Solanke, a big, scary 2 for any opposition defences, where we can score goals with the feet from crosses across the box. We've seen that he can score goals cutting in from the left, like against Everton away last season, where he put it in the top corner. And him and Solanke could be trouble for teams if we're chasing a game late. Meanwhile, according to Tom Barkley, great journalist if you don't follow him, Tottenham's signing of Solanke does not affect the fact that we are looking for another forward player as well, another winger potentially as well, or as he puts it, Tom Barkley puts it, a marquee winger. Now for me, does that mean that the Eberechi Eze possibility is still there? I really hope so. I really hope that we can just squeeze out one more marquee signing. I'll talk a bit more about potential outgoings from Spurs in a minute. But I think potentially there's some more money to come in that could push us to make one more big signing. Bit of a surprise one on Friday and over the weekend, that the man on our list, Pedro Neto, has joined Chelsea. 60 million euros plus 3 million euros in add-ons. He was announced to the Chelsea fans during their 1-1 draw against Inter Milan in a friendly at the weekend. Chelsea have had an absolutely horrible pre-season. I did look at the lineup that they had for that Inter Milan game, and to be fair to Maresca, he's not really blooding many of the, I think they've signed, 12 new players, something like that. He started that game with all the players who were at Chelsea last season. But they've signed Neto. I'm surprised at that. Yet another big signing. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to fit in all their players. I think it's fair to say we were all a bit worried about Pedro Neto's injury record. He's only played something like, I don't know, some people saying he's been injured for over 23%, or he's only played 23% of the games for Wolves in the last few seasons. I saw a Wolves fan say basically he's only been on the pitch for about 50%, so it must be somewhere in between that. But look, Very exciting player, so quick on the ball and would offer us something different, but he's gone to Chelsea where, if you think about all the wingers they've got, Sterling, Madueke, Cole Palmer, and that's just to say 3, he's not going to get in the team easily. And I don't know, maybe that'll suit the fact that he can't get on the pitch anyway because of all his injuries. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk about some outgoings. Aston Villa and Real Betis still keen on Gio Lo Celso. Betis now leading the interest ahead of Villa, who have been asked to be kept informed. Tottenham apparently now willing to drop their price to £10 million. Now, I don't want to say I told you so, but I've been calling it all summer, haven't I? I've been saying, I think what we need to do is try and take around 10 to 15 million pounds for all of these players who are deadwood. So I'm talking about Royale, so we got that for him. Højbjerg, we got that for him. And Lo Celso. Add those little incremental sums into our budget and get the players in with the attributes that big Ange Postecoglou wants, which we've now done with Bergvall, who impressed again at the weekend. Archie Gray looked great at right back. His feet are so quick. I love the look of this player. I don't think he's going to be an initial starter for Spurs, but I think he's going to be a great option for Pedro Porro when he comes on, as is Jed Spence, actually, who did an okay job at left back. So I think let's take this 10 million or so for 10, 12 million for Gio Lo Celso. Push on, move on. Players who are going to be fit, players who are going to have the attributes for big Ange Postecoglou. I think Lo Celso does have the attributes, but he just doesn't play nearly enough. As I mentioned, the Emerson Royale deal has gone through now. He's out in Milan, smiling, happy, and waving. Good for him. A bit of a surprise one over the weekend. Barcelona have apparently been making inquiries for Sergio Reguilon. Reguilon now one of the last, along with Lo Celso, of the proper deadwood players who Ange has said can go elsewhere. Barcelona understood to be exploring the conditions of a potential deal with just a year left on Reguilon's contract. That's according to Sky Sports News, and Reguilon's entourage have confirmed that there have been talks between Barcelona and the player. I mean, I could see him maybe going there as a squad player, but with a year left on his contract at Spurs, I do wonder whether this might be one where we end up kind of like we did with Eric Dyer, like we did with Serge Aurier, kind of ripping up the contract and paying him off a little bit to go. It's not been a signing that's worked, similarly to how Ndombele didn't really work and Lo Celso hasn't really worked, other than a few little lovely moments from Lo Celso. That goal against Villa last season at home and the beautiful goal away at the Etihad as well. But nothing really for Sergio Reguilon. It's not working, and I think he will leave the club. Look, if we can get anything from Barcelona for him, who barely have any money themselves, I don't know, 5 million quid, something like that, take it and move on. Sunderland apparently have significant interest in signing Dane Scarlett on loan this summer. That is kind of scanning with what I think, based on Will Lancashire now coming on in all of the pre-season friendly games. I think Lancashire is ahead of Scarlett in the pecking order, and I think Scarlett needs to go somewhere and actually score some proper goals this season. He needs to go somewhere and score maybe 15 league goals for someone, because otherwise I do not foresee his future being at Spurs. He's really stagnated. I think it's unfortunate because he's obviously got talent, but just like we let Troy Parrott go, I could see us letting Dane Scarlett go if we got any money for him at all at this point. So let's see if he goes on loan to Sunderland. Meanwhile, I mentioned at the top, Ange Postecoglou says that the signings are not done for Spurs, and there are some quotes on that. He says there will be more movements in the market. There will be some activity. So let's see what happens. As I said, I'm hoping it could be another marquee signing, maybe Eza. Pedro Porro has been asked what it's like playing for Ange Postecoglou. He said the following: the first season I was here, I was a normal right back. This right back, I'm a number 9, or this time, under Ange Postecoglou, I'm a number 9 or a number 10. It was difficult for me at first because it was a new system, but now it is top. I play inside, I play outside. It is very good. I love it. Well, similarly to what I was saying about Wesley at the very top of this show, Ange Postecoglou's fullbacks are just given absolute free rein going forward. One thing I will say, and I'm going to talk about the Bayern game a little bit in a second, is the free rein that Udogie and Porro and Spence and whoever plays in those fullback roles gets going forward does mean, I have to say, on the transition, Tottenham are incredibly hard to watch. In that Bayern game, when we lost the ball in the final third, the ease with which Bayern got through the middle, there was just this huge expanse of freedom in the central midfield, and Spurs certainly need to do something about that. I do think that in the second half of that Bayern game, I'll go into that Bayern game now. In the second half of the Bayern game, when we brought on Romero, when we brought on Van der Ven and Destiny Udogie, it did kind of close up a little bit. It was a lot harder for Bayern to get through, and Spurs looked a lot more solid defensively, and that's important. I mean, let's face it, Van der Ven's pace just offers us so much, but like I said, very wide open spaces. Again, we conceded a goal from a set piece, so I'm hopeful that Solanke will help us there because we do look very short. One thing that happens with us at set pieces is not just that we concede goals. When we don't concede goals from set pieces, we pretty much lose the first header all the time. We kind of do have a few players in there who mark in the box and then zonal other players. But the amount of times we lose the first header, it's just so dangerous, and I really need that to improve this season. And I said it last season, I'll say it again. Ange Postecoglou, very stubborn in what he says about not wanting to have a set-piece coach. He said it's never been something he's needed to use, and he has Mile Jedinak, who deals with the defensive set pieces. Now look, that's fine. That's how he feels about it. However, I think that is an opinion you can only have if you are brilliant at defending set pieces. If you're as poor as Spurs were last season and in this preseason at defending set pieces, I feel like you can't be that stubborn about it, especially when you look at all the other clubs. Liverpool had a throw-in coach for a while. Arsenal last season, their set piece coach was like running down the touchline when they scored goals from set pieces. It's just new football. It's modern football, and the times move on. And unfortunately for Big Ange, he's making a bit of a rod for his own back. Whereas if we do not defend set pieces better this season, then this is a story that will not go away, and it will undermine the brilliance of his managership, I think. It will undermine everything that he's doing brilliantly going forward in terms of the progressive front foot, beautiful football we're playing. And I think it's just, at some point, you have to fall on your sword and say, if it's not working, let's try and fix it. Final little bit of news about Spurs before I go on to the other Premier League transfer rumours and gossip. It's a bit of a bad one again. It's been a bad summer for Spurs in terms of our players making terrible decisions. Obviously, we had the Bentancur, a couple of things at the beginning of the season. At the beginning of pre-season, sorry. Yves Bissouma filmed himself on his Snapchat account inhaling laughing gas over the weekend. Not only did he film himself, he uploaded it to Snapchat. Possession of laughing gas with intent to get high is now illegal in the UK. Bissouma did straight away apologise for his actions. He said he had used a severe lack of judgment in doing what he did. And Spurs have said that they are looking into the events and it will be dealt with internally. Look, Bissouma, what a player he can be on the half turn. We really have no one else like him in that six role to take the ball off the keeper, to take the ball off the centre-backs. Although we did, obviously, concede another goal just like that against Bayern at the weekend. So, you know, it's another dangerous thing. But he needs to now, it's 1 week to go till the Premier League season. He needs to be concentrating. He didn't have a great back end of last season. He never really regained his form after getting those 2 red cards. And he needs to show that he wants to be a proper professional. Don't go out clubbing all the time when the season is only just round the corner. Don't be taking laughing gas. What are you doing? I think he's put himself in a bit of a difficult position. I have to say, I cannot imagine Ange Postecoglou would be that impressed with that. I can see him kind of getting him into his office and dragging him over the coals for that one, and rightly so. And Bissouma now is going to need to have a good start to this season. Is it something that Spurs are going to punish him for by dropping him? I'm sure they'll fine him 2 weeks' wages, of course, but it's just not good, and especially not, he's a role model to young kids, and that is not impressive. So, you know, I'm not a judgmental person as a rule, but he's a professional footballer for Tottenham Hotspur, and he needs to be doing everything he can to get in the team first and foremost. And then if he gets in the team for the first game against Leicester, make sure that he plays well. Don't do anything. Just go home, Yves. Go home and rest up, get your legs in some ice, and just be ready. Okay, before I go on to some other Premier League transfer news, guys, please, once again, do press that like button. Press subscribe. If you are not already a subscriber, please do press that subscribe button for daily transfer content, Tottenham content, and also you can become a member. Only £1 a month really helps me make this daily content for you. Let's start though at Manchester United, and they have got their double deal over their line. The star moves for Matthias de Ligt and Noussair Mazraoui from Bayern Munich, the fullback and the centre-half. £60 million combined, and I have to say, Matthias de Ligt, he's dropped off a little bit in form and is now behind Upamecano and Kim Min-jae and Eric Dyer even at Bayern Munich in terms of being a centre-back. But back in the Ajax days, what a brilliant player he was. Back in the Juventus days, he's won championships at all of those clubs. And to get him and Mazraoui in for £60 million, that is a good deal for Man United, a good deal for Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Sir Dave Brailsford and Ineos. So they are flying in for their medicals, I believe, today, and will be unveiled as new Manchester United players. And United, finally, getting some good players in to replace the players that the fans have not been delighted with at Old Trafford and in that back four, by which I mean Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who is going to West Ham, and Harry Maguire, who I think will be under some pressure probably once again for the second summer in a row to try and find a move elsewhere. Meanwhile, United are weighing up a £50 million move for Brighton's Irish international, Evan Ferguson. And that is amid worries at Old Trafford that Chelsea could try and steal him from under their noses. I like Evan Ferguson. He dropped off a little bit last season under De Zerbi, didn't he? He didn't get in the starting team that much, but he's a very exciting young talent. Little bit of Harry Kane about him. I have to say, I'd be very surprised if Brighton let him go for £50 million. I think they'll be looking for a lot more than that. Also, United are apparently planning a fresh bid for Everton's 22-year-old centre-half, Jared Branthwaite. That is because their 18-year-old young signing, Lenny Yoro, is unlikely to play again this year. He's broken his metatarsal, and they're looking at Branthwaite as well. So that could be an interesting trio of centre-back options, couldn't it? Yoro, Branthwaite, and Matthias de Ligt. United really trying to make that happen. As I said, Aaron Wan-Bissaka to West Ham is a here we go from Fabrizio Romano. He'll be unveiled today. Over to Liverpool, and Everton's former chief Keith Wyness has claimed that he thinks Liverpool's superstar player Mohamed Salah will move to Saudi Arabia before the end of this summer's transfer window. The 66-year-old who served as CEO at Goodison Park between 2004 and 2009 and now runs a football consultancy advising elite clubs claims that Salah could move to Saudi Arabia for £100 million or so this summer, and it will be too good a bid for Liverpool to turn down. He's out of contract in 12 months' time, so it's an option basically for Liverpool. Do we take a big old bid for Salah now, or keep him in the hope that he'll sign a new contract, or he might go for free next summer? Salah has long been a target for the Saudi Pro League as they seek to continue to bring high-profile players from Europe to the Middle East. And of course, he would be, along with Ronaldo, wouldn't he, the face of the Saudi Pro League. Meanwhile, and maybe this isn't unconnected, Liverpool maintain a strong interest in Newcastle and England's winger, Anthony Gordon. A deal to buy him back in June collapsed at the last minute, and Gordon's price will be more than it was then. But maybe, if they do take a bid for Salah, maybe Anthony Gordon could go to Liverpool, which would upset Everton fans even more. They were not delighted with Anthony Gordon when he left Everton for Newcastle in the first place. Staying at Liverpool, but also with Brentford, Fabio Carvalho has gone from Liverpool to Brentford for £20 million plus add-ons. That is a great deal for Brentford, a really good signing for Brentford, and a good deal for Carvalho as well, whose career kind of stalled at Liverpool a bit. But I think Brentford is a perfect club for him. He's a very exciting young player. Meanwhile, over to Stamford Bridge, and the craziness, the basket caseness of that club goes on. Chelsea and Atletico Madrid are now discussing João Felix's potential move to Chelsea. Don't forget he was on loan there a season or so ago, wasn't he? That is because the Samu Omarodian deal has collapsed. And the two clubs, Chelsea and Atletico, do not want the deals between Conor Gallagher and Atletico and Julian Alvarez to collapse, the Man City to Atletico deals. They don't want that to collapse, and they need another deal in the middle to make it happen. So that João Felix to Chelsea deal is currently being discussed with his agent, Jorge Mendes, in London. However, that will make Aston Villa's ears prick up, because Unai Emery really wants João Felix over at Villa Park, and he is keen to leave Atletico Madrid, but you've got to think he would choose Chelsea over Aston Villa. Over to West Ham, and I'm sure you saw it on Friday, but their director Tim Steidlen travelled to Nice at the last minute and got John Claire Todibo over the line. Juventus were the favourites to get him for weeks, but it never happened, and West Ham got him done for €40 million plus a sell-on clause. Fair play to West Ham. They've bought some players this season, and it looks like they might start with a Max Kilman and John Claire Todibo centre-back partnership now that Kurt Zouma is leaving the club. West Ham are going to have to integrate a lot of new players and their new manager, Lopetegui, but I think it's an exciting time potentially for West Ham fans. It might take some assimilating, some blooding in, but I think they'll have more exciting football to watch at the London Stadium, which is what West Ham fans have been begging for since David Moyes was there. And let's face it, Moyes did a great job. Meanwhile, over to Fulham, they have offered £20 million for Joachim Anderson from Crystal Palace. Palace want more towards £40 million. Obviously, Mark Gahey being linked with a move to Newcastle as well. Palace have rejected a lot of moves from Newcastle for him, but both their starting centre-halves interesting other clubs. I'm not sure why Joachim Andersen would want to go from Palace to Fulham, other than potentially, I guess, to get another big move or one big move. Fulham are also considering Aston Villa, their Diego Carlos. All of that is according to The Athletic. Meanwhile, over to South London. Well, across South London from Selhurst Park to Woolwich, Arsenal are plotting a move to sign Bayern Munich's Kingsley Coman on a season-long loan. Bayern are going to allow him to leave this summer, but they require with a loan option or an obligation to buy after any loan deal. Brentford's Ivan Toney, who's been left in the lurch a little bit now that Spurs have gone to Solanke. Arsenal don't want him, and it looks like no big English clubs are going in for Ivan Toney. So, Saudi Pro League clubs now looking at him, with Al Ali keen on the 28-year-old England international. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. Will Ivan Toney go to Saudi to get the money? I would worry. It'd be a bit dangerous for Ivan Toney, I would have thought, to earn as much money as he could in Saudi when he has his kind of gambling history. Nottingham Forest have rejected Atalanta's bid of more than €20 million for their Welsh defender Neco Williams. That's a big bid rejected there. And Leicester, who Spurs play next Monday, have made a £23 million bid for 24-year-old Panathinaikos and Greek striker Fotis Ioannidis, as Leicester also continue to try and get Wilfried Zaha on loan or a permanent deal from Galatasaray. Palace and Leicester looking at Wilfried Zaha, who obviously is keen to come back to England from Turkey. And then finally, just some more general intel and story that came back out on Friday and Saturday. Lee Carsley has been appointed the interim England coach, initially for September's fixtures versus Republic of Ireland and Finland, but with a view to remaining in the position throughout autumn while the FA's recruitment process for a new permanent head coach continues. That to me says that the FA are looking to go big on a manager who is not available at the moment. So that could be potentially someone like Pep Guardiola. And the reason why Pep Guardiola could be, I think, a potential England manager in the future is because although he's Spanish, he actually is Catalan. And I think that means he wouldn't be desperate to manage the Spanish national team. And also, let's face it, for big Pep Guardiola, one of the things that people kind of take the mick out of him for a little bit, obviously he's won everything, but he's never had to do anything with a club or a team who've not won everything before. Obviously, he started at Barcelona, then Bayern Munich, then Man City. They're like the most successful clubs in each country. But if he came to manage England, who haven't won anything since 1966, he could put the seal on his magnificent career. Anyway, Lee Carsley, the interim boss, said the following: "It's an honour to step up and lead this England squad on an interim basis. As I'm very familiar with the players and the cycle of international football, it makes sense for me to guide the team while the FA continues the process to recruit a new manager. My main priority is to ensure continuity, and our goal is to secure promotion in the UEFA Nations League." Well, if any of you have watched Lee Carsley's under-21s, they play beautiful 1- and 2-touch triangle football, attacking football. So it could be interesting, could be fun to watch England in these next couple of games and see what we can do. No pressure on Carsley, and then see what can happen in terms of getting a new manager in. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. I really appreciate it. Do press that like button. Please do subscribe if you haven't already for daily content about all things transfers and Tottenham Hotspur and the Premier League. And also, please do become a member. Only £1 a month. Details in the description box. Really helps me. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your day. Cheers.